This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended as tax, accounting, financial, or legal advice. Okay, let's go. Most families don't think about home safety until after the first fall. Today, we're trying to beat that timeline. Welcome to the Sandwich Bread Podcast. I'm Tom Kaminski, and I'm joined by occupational therapist Emilia Bourland to talk about aging in place, practical home modifications, and planning for caregiving realities. We've included all resources discussed in today's episode in the show notes. Let's jump in. Welcome, everybody, back to another episode of the Sandwich Bread Podcast. I'm your host, Tom Kaminski. I'm really excited to have on today's show Emilia Bourland. She is now newly Kansas City-based occupational therapist, and that's the focus of today's dialogue. So getting out in front of the aging process, fitting a home or a preferred living space for aging safely for a parent or elder. So really excited for this conversation. Welcome, Emilia.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
Well, and Emilia had me on the Care Lab podcast to talk financial planning with a couple occupational therapists. So
I know. So hopefully I was nice to you on Care Lab. So you'll be nice
rough.
to me here.
I love it. We'll link to the episode. All right, so let's start with Emilia. I'd like to learn about you, your credentials, your experience, and then we'll segue into the part of the episode that relates to outfitting the home and care, proactive care. So I see some letters beneath your name. I come from an industry of letters that
So many
is
letters.
obsessed with letters and credentials. So tell us about yours.
Yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah, so OTR basically just stands for Occupational Therapist Registered. It means I'm like nationally certified, which is something that pretty much all therapists have to do after they graduate from school and before they get licensed in the state that they are licensed to work in. ECHM stands for Executive Certificate of Home Modification. That's from USC's Leonard Davis School of Gerontology, and that's a big, long program helping professionals from lots of different backgrounds actually prepare to help clients to age in place at home. And there's a really great occupational therapy focus in that program as well. Certified CFPS stands for Certified Fall Prevention Specialist, which basically means I have a bunch of experience and have taken a ton of coursework specifically around fall prevention because it's a huge passion of mine.
Well, what I like about your educational experience is that you sort of started broad, like psychology, and then occupational therapy with your master's, and then as you've gotten additional credentialing, you've gotten more narrow with your focus, seemingly. Is that fair?
Yeah, in a way, I think so. One of the things that really attracted me to being an occupational therapist is I am a person with really broad interests. I'm very curious, and being an occupational therapist is something that allows me to constantly be like stretching my knowledge base, flexing different muscles, because, you know, if you're working as a therapist in a variety of settings, you're seeing a huge number of things on a daily basis. So, but absolutely, yes, there are definitely things that you develop passion for. One of the things that I'm really passionate for is doing home modifications and helping people to age where they want to age. And the other is preventing falls, because I cannot tell you the number of people that I have seen in hospitals and rehabs who did not need to be there.
Yeah, that's frustrating.
Yeah, super frustrating. And so that's one of the reasons that I've really dedicated a lot of like my own practice and my own like educational content that I create towards things like fall prevention and aging in place.
These are the things that are weigh on me as I think about, you know, the aging process for my clients or my clients' parents.
Yeah.
And I just want to have
huge financial impacts. I mean, massive financial impacts. So we can't even think about financial planning if we're not also thinking about people's health and specifically things like fall prevention. Yeah.
My job is to meet people like yourself and bring them into the fold at the appropriate time or provide a resource set to help people do a little bit better jobs. I want to start high level with you. Occupational therapy. Could you start by clarifying what that means?
Yes. You know, we hear the word occupation and we assume that has to do with paid employment. Occupational therapists actually define it much more broadly. The field of occupational therapy has been around since 1918. And it's really about how we're meaningfully occupying our time. An occupational therapist absolutely might be helping someone to regain the skills or make accommodations that they need in order to go back to work. But we're also concerned with really whatever it is that people want, need, and have to do. And that can be everything from helping people to get dressed, bathe, feed themselves, to doing leisure activities. Even sleep is something that we work on. And then all the way up the ladder to, really complex things like driving, going back to work.
Yeah. Okay. When would somebody need an occupational therapist versus just general physical therapist? Maybe help us understand the differences.
Yeah. So the goal of occupational therapy, like I said, is to help you return to the activities that you want, need, or have to do, or return to those occupations.
Okay.
Physical therapists care about those things as well, but occupational therapists kind of view that return a little bit more broad and holistic. So while we absolutely do things like physical rehabilitation, we are also able to draw from kind of other tools in a toolbox. So we think about not just the aspects and the characteristics of the person and what's coming from the person to be able to help them do a thing that they want to do, but also what are the particular aspects of that activity itself? What can be changed or modified about that activity? How much does that impact your ability to be comfortable, to be able to be productive throughout the day?
Awesome. So in the context of aging at home, let's talk a little bit about that. Let's talk a little bit about at what age should you start to have this dialogue with your parents about outfitting the home appropriately for the aging process?
I think that conversation doesn't just start with our parents and the older folks in our lives, but it really should start with us. When you're in your 40s, because you want to be thinking about, and this is going to sound maybe kind of morbid, but that's not the goal here. Like, if something happened, how well could I exist in this place? Or if something happened to one of my parents or one of my loved ones and I needed to care for them, how could we live in this space? So if you've got parents in their 50s, hey, mom and dad, do you think that you're going to stay in the home that you're in now, or are you going to downsize eventually? And they may not know the answer to that necessarily, but it's about knowing what people want and what people would want to happen. And there's really no time that is too early to begin understanding what people's desires are, not just as they age, but for the life that they want to live. And it's not about being old or being a certain number. It's about, how do I want my life to look? How do I want to live it? It really happens that as we age, our number of fall risks tend to increase, and our likelihood of being injured during a fall increases as well.
Yeah. I mean, I feel injured and I don't fall. I just feel general, non-specific pain.
Have you fallen recently? It hurts.
Oh,
so
yeah,
bad.
yeah. Everything hurts. Big picture. Everything hurts. Every joint.
Yeah. Well, you might want to look into that, Tom. I don't know.
Okay, so maybe we need a consult right after this. No, so I think that is going back to your original comment. A gentle question to ask your parents that is not combative or pushy is to say, like, do you want to stay in this home, or have you thought about moving elsewhere? It allows them enough space to just come in and say, well, we haven't thought about it, or we actually do want to downsize at some point. Then you say, well, what does that look like? Yeah,
what do you want your retirement years to look like? Do you want to stay where you are? Do you want to be somewhere walkable? Are you going to be comfortable driving? Do you want to stay here so that you can host big, Christmas parties and things like that? Having a regular conversation about what people want their lives to look like, I think, is a helpful place to start. And then let's say someone says, no, we want to downsize, or yes, this is where we want to be. So what are we looking for? We're looking for spaces that can work flexibly for us, meaning if let's say there was a situation where you couldn't go upstairs. Maybe this is a 2-story home or 3-story home because y'all have basements and there are just stairs galore. But if I needed to live on the first floor, could I? And even if there's not a bathroom that's accessible down there now, is there a space that we could turn into an accessible bathroom?
Yeah.
If that's what our plan is, are we then planning financially to be able to do that if and when we need to, right? Yeah. Is there a way to reasonably make it able to accommodate people with a wide variety of mobility requirements within a cost that I'm comfortable with? And so I think those are good basic questions to just be thinking about at any age.
The way our house is laid out, the one I live in, there's no practical way to put a bedroom on the ground floor or a full bath. It's just not in the cards. So that is something to be proactive about. And so I'm hearing, like, step one, how do you want to age? then step 2 is look at the home you live in and start thinking practically about what is needed to be safe when you age. Let me ask you, I often thought, well, are stairs good or bad?
That's a really interesting question. So what I would say is that stairs aren't necessarily good or bad, okay, as long as we have in our own capacity the ability to go up and down those stairs, and the stairs are safely built. And if we fall downstairs, you're going to hit a lot more things on the way down, and you're going to fall a lot farther than if you have what we call like a ground level fall where you're falling to a flat surface. That doesn't make stairs good or evil. It's just something to understand. In terms of whether or not going up and down stairs keeps you healthier, in terms of flexibility though, like in terms of thinking about what we want to have in order to age in place, is a ranch style home generally going to be more flexible than a place with a lot of stairs? Generally, yes.
Jump in real quick here. So you offered a couple good things. Step 1, how to start the conversation. Step 2 is outfit the home.
Sure.
What other like major hazards jump out to you that something you would want to counter or protect against?
Well, like you said, it really does depend on the individual and kind of what circumstances they are facing. Do a home modification recommendation for someone with dementia really differently than I'm going to do who has, a visual impairment or who has a mobility impairment or something like that. You want to think about the rooms that you or the person that you love are going to use the most. So these are generally, our living spaces that we're in all the time, our bedrooms, our bathrooms, our kitchens. Obviously, lots of falls do occur in the bathroom.
Yep.
Why? Because there's water involved, there can be soap involved, so things are slippery. If healthcare actually will teach you anything, if things are going to go wrong, it's probably going to go wrong when someone is naked. So, you just want to consider that for sure.
We have the title of the episode. Oh, man. I love it. So, yeah, just thinking about where you're going to spend your time, like that would be the other operative piece of advice.
It's also just about general accessibility. Thinking about if I had a walker, if I had a wheelchair, could I reasonably navigate from the sidewalk to the house, from the garage to the house? It takes very, very little to make something difficult to navigate with a walker or a wheelchair. So it's definitely something to consider.
We've been talking about, aging in the home, more from a physical aging process, but let's talk maybe about dementia, Alzheimer's. Are there different considerations?
So there are different considerations when someone has a cognitive impairment or dementia for aging in place. But there are some big things to keep in mind. So I think one of the things to be thinking about when someone is diagnosed with dementia, obviously many families want to keep someone in their home or with them for as long as possible. I do think as the process kind of continues, it is important to ask yourself the question, will there be a caregiver available who is going to be able to provide 24-hour support and supervision in this very demanding condition at some point? Because almost no matter what, there is no substitute for supervision when it comes to safety. And when we're dealing with really complex cognitive impairments or degenerative cognitive conditions like dementia, it's at a certain point someone is going to need 24-hour supervision and assistance. And understandably, many families are not able to provide that. Many loving spouses or children or individuals, it's just a very big task. And how are we going to actually manage that task? Because it is monumental. And so even before we're thinking about, the modifications, we need to be really asking and honest with ourselves about our own capabilities, our boundaries. Are we going to need help in the home? If this isn't going to be possible, how are we going to pay for this person to go into a community where they can get that kind of care that maybe we're not able to provide at home? There's not a right or a wrong here. There's so much guilt around caring for our loved ones, around caring for people with dementia. It is one of the hardest jobs that anyone could ever do.
I appreciate all of that. So much there. I guess the first thing, and that's a segue into the next section of our conversation, but paying for care.
Yeah.
Right. What I try to do for my clients is you kind of take the statistical average of long-term care needs, which is published studies every year, and you assess the cost for about 2 years before passing for basically light to moderate care, because that is the statistical average. However, you extrapolate that out into a dementia need where you are going to transition into 24-hour care, and $35 an hour around the clock for an in-home health aide is, I off the top of my head, it's in the 200,000s per year.
It's astronomical. Yeah, it's not out of reach for the vast majority of people to do it in that way.
Better to just not push it aside, better to have the conversation and do planning as you're suggesting. To understand the costs, understand the different options at your disposal. Very emotional, very difficult to kind of navigate this because you want the very best for your parents or the elders. That's a painful decision to make. But it is out of reach for the vast majority of families. 24-hour care for years, even for people of decent means, it's just totally out of reach. So with that, maybe let's transition into the strategies for paying for renovations, paying for care. How do you help your clients? How do you help them navigate the insurance system, long-term care policies? And maybe you can share a little bit about your experience going through that.
Long-term care policies don't generally pay for skilled services. So occupational therapy is considered like a skilled service provider. Basically, that means that we're helping with like medical needs, same as like nursing or doctors or things like that. A lot of times long-term care, though many policies will pay for in-home care for a certain number of hours up to a certain benefit. It really just depends on the policy. Knowing what that policy does and doesn't cover helps you to understand what those options are. When it comes to things like insurance and paying for home modification, most insurance doesn't necessarily pay for home modifications directly.
Yeah.
There have been lots of studies done showing that an average modification costing around $1,200 is all a lot of people need in order to have a huge outcome change. And in my experience doing home modifications, most of the people that I work with are not millionaires who can afford to do, a lot of folks don't necessarily have money to go and do all of these big modifications. But when we can change the environment using a piece of equipment or by rearranging things, or,
railing or carpeting.
By changing the technique that we're doing something with, like that's the real value of having an occupational therapist come in your home and help you with it. Because if you have a contractor over, and there are fabulous contractors over there that work in home modifications that do beautiful work, but their job is to do construction. My job as an occupational therapist is to help you do the thing that you need to do in the way that makes the most sense for you, both in your situation, which includes your financial situation. So if taking out your tub shower and putting in a new roll-in or walk-in shower is not in the cards for you, that's fine. We have equipment we can solve that problem with, and that costs about $45. So it doesn't necessarily have to be this huge investment. We can think about it in ways that really maximize effectiveness and lower costs. And that's the benefit of having an occupational therapist kind of at the forefront of that process.
And in terms of paying for these costs, financial planners like myself generally love HSA plans. We pitch them whenever appropriate to our clients as a really powerful tax saving vehicles for building a substantial sum of money that's used for qualified medical expenses. Not tax advice specifically to your situation, but engage your tax professional and say, hey, we're thinking about doing these specific things for our health. Do they qualify as a medical expense against our AGI for a possible itemized deduction?
Yep, that's awesome advice.
So I'm going to revise the steps. I'm going to say now, step one is have the conversation with your parents or elders. Just have an open dialogue about what their hope is to age. Mm-hmm. Step two, rather than actually going around the home considering renovations needed, step two would be engage a professional for a consultation. If you know which home you're going to stay in, have a professional in for a simple, low, flat cost to observe, assess your home for aging. So that would be step two. Step three, develop the budget. And then you start to know if you can actually afford the modifications needed for your aging plan. This will obviously change over time. And then the fourth step would be actually paying in a most cost-effective, tax-efficient way for all these modifications. Is that fair? 4-step process.
I think that's super fair. And again, I just want to reiterate like the value of having an occupational. This is literally what we are trained to do. There aren't actually other professionals that are trained to do environmental modification in the way that we are, and thinking about what's going on here now and then projecting out into the future. So you will absolutely not only have a better outcome, but it will save you money working with an occupational therapist right up front.
I love that. In my profession, it's find a specialist with expertise in your specific need, not an occupational therapist, but an occupational therapist that specializes in modifications to the home. I mean, so it's take that skill, that very important knowledge skill, but then look for the specialist. Look into their background, try to get references, and other client experiences is always helpful as well.
Absolutely.
Do you have places you would point people to find an occupational therapist that specializes in this type of consult?
Yeah. My co-host, Brandy Archie, her company is Ask Sammy, and they can help provide virtual occupational therapy assessments. There's also a great company called Rosarium Health. They also do occupational therapy assessments first, and they can help with things like what benefits there might be available to you in your health plan to pay for the assessment and then pay for any modifications as well. So those are two great companies. Cool. Another great resource that you can try to find someone who is ECHM certified, just like I am, is you can go to USC's website. It's the Leonard Davis School of Gerontology, and you can just basically Google like Executive Certificate of Home Modification. Everyone who's ever graduated from that program is listed there. And so that's a great way to find folks who may be local to you.
Wonderful. Awesome. Really good resources. Obviously, we'll include those in the show notes. So
that's right.
I'll close with, what are you working on? I saw an interesting business venture you appear to have launched. So you want to share with us a little bit about LumaLink, I believe?
Yeah. So LumaLink is basically a connecting service where we help people to find the things that they need based on the problems that they have. Right now, we're really doing that through communities that focus on senior living. But basically, sometimes you know what you need, but you don't know how to get it, or you know what your problem is, but you don't know what the solution is, right? And so LumaLink is basically this very simple voice concierge that people can call up, and they can get access to things to help them age in place, support services that'll come right to them there in their community, and can help link them to things that are already available within that community itself. So really excited about what we're doing at LumaLink. I also just published that book, What Do I Do When? An Occupational Therapist to Daily Challenges of Dementia Care. But if that's something you're struggling with, please check that out. There is a ton of just very practical, paint by numbers, like XYZ, here are some things that you can do in these situations.
Good. Love it. So you've started a business, written a book, and then you got to do CE. So that's your life.
Yeah. At some point, I have to feed my children, too.
Yeah. Emilia, thank you so much for coming on today. This has been an amazing episode in my view. Great content, simple and actionable, because that gets done. So
thank you so much for having me on. Really enjoyed it, and I'm very honored to be a guest here. Bye.
Sandwich Bread Pod is hosted by me, Tom Kaminski. Huge thank you to Lauren Nose, our executive producer, for making this show happen, and to Andrew Maxon of Celebrator Creative Studios for branding and design. And lastly, to Audionautics for our theme music. Are you someone in the sandwich generation? We'd love to hear from you. Share with us your story, and maybe we'll find a way to work you into our podcast, or simply reference the materials and the experiences you've had. We value that very much. Reach out to us at sandwichbreadpod@twinrobins.com or hello@twinrobins.com. TWINROBINS.com. Thanks so much again for listening. The information discussed in this podcast is only for general explanations and education. It is not specific tax, legal, or investment advice. Before acting on anything you heard here, first consult with your tax, legal, or investment advisor. Past performance of any investment discussed on this show does not guarantee future results. Twin Robins Capital LLC is a registered investment advisor offering advisory services in the states of Missouri, Georgia, Indiana, Virginia, and in all other jurisdictions where exempted. Registration does not imply a certain level of skill or training.
This is a Twin Robins production. I think we nailed it.